Welcome back, everybody. Today we're in the shop working on the Leblond lathe, and we're going to take this chuck apart. I found this from a guy up in Virginia. This is a 10-inch 4-jaw independent. It's a Union brand and it's in pretty good shape, just a little surface rust and dirt in it. So the first thing I'm going to do is oil everything down. I already started working with this jaw a little bit. This jaw is really tight for some reason. We're just going to get some oil in here. Let that be kind of soaking in. Get it all up in all the little crevices where we can work this stuff free without damaging anything. And these bolts, we're going to take that off next. And now we got oil in it. Flip it. Some oil down in here. Let that soak in for a little while. Now we're going to take this back plate off. I think we're going to take the jaws off first. We're going to take this back plate off and clean it really good. And I personally always like to mark these and put them back the way they were. And the way I've done it on this is I've actually taken a center punch and just lightly on a surface this is a mating surface here, so we don't want to damage this, but this surface is not, neither is this surface, so we just slightly made a mark here and one here, and we'll know that that lines up when we go to put this back together. So we'll get oil in everything. Start working with these chuck jaws, trying to get them out. Now this one's really tight, and I've ran it back and forth, tried to clean, but we're going to try to get it on out. And this actually uses a 7/16 square chuck key, which I do not have. I'm going to have to get on eBay or go to one of my machinery dealers or something, try to find one, or make one. I can make one out of key stock, but I'd rather find an old one. So I'm just going to use the 7/16 square socket that I had. This one's fighting me a little bit here. It's a lot tighter than I want, and I hope that that's not damage. I hope it's just some rust and dirt. It's not so tight that I feel like I'm breaking something. It is very tight. And it is possible that this is not actually the jaw for this slot. See that hopefully here pretty soon. A793 C1. It says C1. I'm guessing that's the one, and this is the jaw for that slot. We'll see if these markings, if the others have like a C2 or a C3 on them, if that's the correct. In fact, let's just go ahead and switch around to the number 2 jaw here, because these chuck jaws really only are supposed to go one way. That's the reason they're numbered. This one's a lot easier to move here. I'm guessing that one was probably just had a bunch of gunk and dirt and surface rust in it. That's why it's so tight, because nothing really looks damaged. Okay, yeah, C2. So that's jaw number 2, and it'll probably be hard for you to see, but there's a number 2 right here on the chuck. There's also a row of numbers here, 3 through 10, and that designates inches. So you can kind of preset your jaws, close. But I'm not real sure why number 1 was so tight. There's absolutely no dings in the screw. There is a lot of gunk in it, so I don't feel any burrs or dings in the keyed slots. Well, nope, I take that back. Right there is a little dinged up area, and that may have been part of our problem. So I'm going to go ahead and take the rest of these chuck jaws out off camera. I won't bore you with taking the rest of them out now that you've seen it. And then we'll flip it and we'll take the retainers for these screws out. So we can get the screws out of there and take the back plate off. And that's pretty much it for this chuck. And, so I'll bring you back once I get these jaws off. Okay, so we got the chuck jaws out. I'm going to take these screws here out. And I did already break these loose. These are in pretty tight. And I love these screwdrivers with the hex on it where you can put a wrench. And these are snap-ons, but I think a lot of companies make these. The important part is it's a good screwdriver and it's got the place for a wrench so you can get a little extra leverage. Now when I take this stuff out, I'm going to observe which jaw it came out of, and we'll keep everything together and not mix it up. Now that may not necessarily be important, but I feel like these old chucks on these machines, stuff wears, stuff was assembled, it's been assembled like that probably since it was new. We're just gonna play it safe and leave it like that. This happens to be number 1, so we're gonna put that with number 1. Take all the screws out, and then we're gonna pull these pieces. Actually see which way we're going. So 2, it should be 3 and 4. Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna go around. This is number 2. Now we're gonna go get a puller or make a puller maybe to pull these things out. These are threaded. Be able to thread a bolt in there and pull them out. Alright, so what we're going to do, and I've already got one of them out just as a test, is we soaked them all down again, and we found a socket that actually has a bigger inner diameter than the outer diameter of these things. We're going to use this as a puller. Now normally I wouldn't use a socket in this fashion, but I don't really have anything laying around the shop right now to use other than this. And these are pretty gunky, and I'm going to just use a tap to kind of clean out the threads here. This is a 3/8. We're just going to run that in there, clean the threads out a little bit. I'm going to clean them out better later on. And we just got a piece of all thread, our socket, and a few washers. Go through the socket. This is a 1/2 inch drive socket, so we got plenty of room. I'll thread as far into that as we can. And this is just going to be our makeshift extractor for these pins. And we're just going to tighten this nut up, and it's just drawing that out of the hole there. You can tell when it gets closer to the top because it gets real easy to turn. That's it. I'm going to back this off a little bit, unscrew, and that's the pin right there. And that allows us, this is what actually captures these screws. And this one's number 2. We'll keep these in order with the parts also. So pull those out, and the last thing that's left to take off will be the back plate. So I'm going to pull these 2 out, and then we'll bring you back and we'll take this back plate off. Alright, we got all these pins extracted. Last thing we got to take off is this back plate. And it has some socket cap screws here, some hex sockets cap screws. And we're going to hope that we have 3/8. These old chucks are, unless somebody's changed something, should all be standard here. So yeah, 3/8. Back here we're going to have to use an open-end wrench. It's tight, and they're on there too. Once you break them loose, they're not too bad. And remember, we mark that back plate where we can get it. I'm not as concerned about the bolts being back in their original spots on this one, but the back plate I like to get back in their original spots. Everything broke loose. Seeing a lot of rust on these bolts, so I like that. Sorry about that noise. Our air compressor was running there for a little while. See if we can loosen this up. Yep, there we go. That's pretty clean. I like that. This chuck is in really good condition. It's just got some surface rust and it's just grungy. It is in really good condition. So that's the easy part. It's the dirty part, but it's the easy part. The next part will be a little less dirty. We're going to start cleaning this up, and probably just going to take this stuff right to the parts washer station and just start degreasing it, scrubbing out some of the crud, and then we'll dry it off good, and probably take a fine wire wheel and start cleaning everything up. I will take this back plate to the lathe and make sure that once we get it clean that everything is good with it. We don't have any issue with the threads. These Leblonds have an odd thread on them. It's like an 1 1/8" 5. Best I remember. I know it's a 5 TPI. I think it's an 1 1/8" or 2 1/8", something like that. I will look that up and tell you at the end of this video, or put it in the description, because I cannot remember off the top of my head right now what the actual diameter is, but I know it's a 5 threads per inch. We'll go to the parts washer station. Alright, we got chuck in the parts washer. I've actually already washed some of these jaws. This is the last one. We're going to wash this stuff. I'm not going to bore you with it. It's just, we got some stuff looks kind of brown, but it's actually that Zep purple that we use for most stuff. We're going to just get in here and scrub for a while, especially on this chuck. This stuff, it comes pretty clean, pretty easy. You know, there's not really any rust on this stuff because it's been oiled. A little bit on the jaw maybe, but and you can see all this grunge that's on these things. That's why our jaws were so hard to move. And this one, here's a good example. This one actually has a busted spot. Be a little hard to see there. It's got a little busted ear on it, where it's been treated a little rough. Now, this really isn't gonna, and I'll show you this when I get it cleaned up more, this isn't gonna hinder us much, and we do have options if we want to fix it, but there's still plenty of meat in here for that to run on. Like I said, I'll explain that a little better when we get it cleaned up and I can show you more. We got 2 of these that actually have a little busted spot on them, but it's really not gonna hurt us too much. This is just going to be a time-consuming project of degreasing and scrubbing before we dry everything off and start with our fine wire wheel getting the surface rust off. We just want to make sure all the grease and gunk is off of everything. I'm going to keep on with this for a while. Alright, so we're going to start cleaning up these parts, the small parts here. We're just going to use the wire wheel. And we got a fine wire wheel and a coarse wire wheel. And we're starting out with some pretty rusty parts here. these jaws have quite a bit of surface rust on the top. So we just keep working at it. The wire will do work. You don't want to bear down on this too much. Be a little more aggressive on these surfaces out here than in these keyways. You want to just clean those up. You can see how nice and shiny they still are because they've had oil on them. Just clean it up really nice. And you'll have some tarnish left behind, and that's okay. You don't have to worry about getting that off. You'll be into the metal trying to get that off. That's not what you want to do. We just want to clean this up, get it smooth again and serviceable. See the difference? That side we're cleaning up. We're just going to keep doing this on all of them, all the little parts the same way, nothing's going to change. And we'll have all the jaws and the back plate cleaned up like this. And we'll move on to the chuck body, which we'll have to clean up with a handheld wire wheel. Okay, so bringing you back to these things. Before I was showing you, we had two of these that had an ear broke off here, and this is where the screw rides, and there's pressure on that. Now the options here are we could flip this around where the pressure was actually pushing on the other side, you know, on the direction we're going to clamp most, but we can't do that because we have this flat. Now we could index this and mill a flat on the other side and flip it. There's no reason we can't. But, or we could weld this up actually and then recut it. But there's plenty of meat in here still. We're not too worried about this. What we are worried about though, and I should have got this before, but I don't think you could have seen it on camera, is there was a hairline crack on this other ear. It was starting to go. So I've cut into this and I'm going to weld this up and help support this on both of them. They're both like that, the two that are damaged. And then we'll put them back into service. We're not going to worry about this ear that's chipped off. We're not real hard on equipment, so this is going to this will be good serviceable for years for us, but we do need to go weld these up. Alright, so we have cleaned this up. We just took a wire wheel to it and cleaned it up. Then we took some of these little Scotch-Brite pads, these Roll-Locks. These are very, very fine, as to not take any material off, or not take much material off at all. And we're going to start putting this back together. So we want to slide this in before we start putting these in, and we're going to put a little oil on everything. This is just whey oil. You just want to get a little bit on this, and we want to just get a light film in here to help this slide in. Film on here, and we're going to align this flat with where the screw goes. We're going to start pushing it in and twist it a little bit on us, which is kind of normal. I have to go get a pair of pliers and twist this around. And these can be a pain sometimes to get in correctly. Once we get it down that far, I'm going to make sure that we're lined up here correctly. Get a screw started in here. Holding the chuck jaw screw up in. We're going to have to get a block of wood or something to kind of hammer. Alright, so it's kind of hard to do one-handed, but we got a block of wood so we don't mar anything. We're just going to tap down, tighten our screw down a little bit. We don't want to go too far, and we're holding this screw up while we're doing this. That's probably about it right there. I'm hesitant to try to pull this in with these screws because these screws aren't very big. Actually might go a little more. I think we're there. Yep. So we're going to repeat that 4 times. And then we can put the chuck jaws back in. Alright, I went ahead and put the jaws in it. Next thing is to move on to this back plate. The number 1 jaw, if you remember, that's the one that was kind of tough when we were taking it apart to get out. That thing fought me no end. Tommy's still over there laughing at me. Just could not figure out why it was binding so bad. Checked the screw, it wasn't warped. I mean, we checked everything. There ended up being just the slightest little burr underneath in one of the keys there. But that thing fought, what, 30 minutes I worked on that thing, Tommy? It's about 30 minutes, and I didn't film it. Of course, if I had filmed it, there would have probably just been a series of beeps, is all you would have heard. It irritated me a little bit. But we got it back together. Everything's good, tight. We're going to put this back plate back on it. If I can get this heavy thing lifted here. And if you remember, right there's our index mark. And we'll make sure this is good and clean. There's our index mark on the back plate. And that's how it's going to go on there. Everything lined up good. And see if we can get a bolt through it. Yeah, looking good here. And one thing I do want you to make note of is I tested this back plate on the lathe while it was loose, and it would not screw down all the way. This didn't come off of our lathe. And you don't want it to bear on these threads. You want it to actually screw down against this surface here. And it was a little bit off. So we put this on the Atlas lathe in there, the Atlas Craftsman, and bored out a little bit, recessed a little more. Now it's drawn up tight on the machine. And that's what we want. So we're going to go ahead, we're just going to tighten this back plate up, and then we'll take you over and we'll put it on the lathe. I think we got a little burr on this screw here. We may have to take it out. Let's see if it's the screw or the nut. Yep, it's that bolt. Sorry, I said screw, but it's a bolt. Socket bolt. Oh, might have one on that one too. So we're going to straighten these out, clean those up a little bit, and put this thing together and take it over and mount it on the machine. Alright, there it is on the machine. Took about 2 or 3 hours for me just kind of piddling around getting this thing redone, but it looks good. It's a good chuck. I want you to note that this is a piece of wood here. Always put a piece of wood when you're changing a chuck. I think that the people that had this machine before did not observe that. See all the dings stuff there. That's either from bits breaking, chucks getting dropped, or work being flung out of the chuck. And it possibly could even, heaven forbid, I cringe at the thought, be from a chuck key getting left in the chuck. But that's actually probably more prone to fly out and kill somebody than to hit the waste. But that's it. 4-jaw chuck rebuild. Get this around, maybe you can see the mark there, Union Manufacturing.